everyone, and welcome to the Master Series, your guide to intelligent production, brought to you by Entertainment Partners. I'm your host, Natalie Nelson. In the Master Series, we focus on important issues impacting the entertainment industry and its workers through in-depth discussions with legal, tax, payroll, technology, and production experts. And today, our experts will be discussing Australia's recently reformed location offset and how productions can benefit not only from the incentive, but the many resources available to productions filming in Australia. For over 46 years, Entertainment Partners has been at the forefront of the industry, continually investing to ensure our clients and their productions are successful. As a global leader in entertainment payroll, production finance, and production management solutions, our integrated cloud-based digital solutions support every phase of production. Our established and growing team in Australia specialize in payroll, tax incentives, production accounting, and training, an important component of the location offset rebate. And our Australian experts, some of whom you will hear from today, offer decades of experience and the best guidance in the industry. Two quick housekeeping items as we get started today. First is that we encourage you to join the conversation by posting questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom call. You can do so by clicking the Q&A icon in the navigation menu, and we'll do our best to save time after our discussion to answer you. Also, please take a few seconds after our discussion today to answer a short feedback survey. This includes an opportunity for you to give us feedback, as well as suggest topics for future webinars. Your feedback is very important to us, so 30 seconds is all that we ask. Now, I am very pleased to introduce you to today's panelists. Today, we are joined by Jill Hewitt, Training Director for Entertainment Partners powered by Moneypenny. Jill has been a part of the Moneypenny team since 1989. Starting out as an accounts assistant, she worked her way up to be production accountant, financial controller on films such as Muriel's Wedding, Paradise Road, Oscar and Lucinda, and Moulin Rouge. As training director, her informal role as a mentor to emerging accountants over the past decade has now been expanded into a full-time position to help with the critical shortage for production accountants and assistants that the industry currently is facing. Today, her role includes running both short and long courses for AFTRS and most recently Netflix and other independent training bodies, setting up new productions to succeed with the right team, and mentoring the right candidates who wish to step up into the financial controller position. Also with us today is Josh Pomeranz, Managing Director of Spectrum Films, Australia's leading post-production house based in Disney Studios, Australia. Upon completing his Bachelor's of Business, Josh teamed up with his father, Spectrum Films founder Hans Pomeranz, OAM, cementing Spectrum as a family business committed to supporting the Australian film and television industry. Under Josh's leadership, Spectrum has expanded to include strategic alliances and investments, and the company has gained a strong international presence with offices in LA and Hong Kong. And recent productions include Mortal Kombat, Elvis, Thor, Love and Thunder, Shang-Chi, 3,000 Years of Longing, and The Pope's Exorcist. And Spectrum is now celebrating their 59th year. Also with us today is Liberty Warr, Incentives Manager at Entertainment Partners powered by Moneypenny. Liberty has a wealth of knowledge and experience with foundations in payroll, accounting, and administration. As incentives manager, Liberty and her team specialize in navigating the complexities of the tax rebate application, focusing on maximizing returns with a detailed analysis and removing the stress of the application process. Together, she and her team have managed lodging over 50 final tax rebate applications in the last calendar year alone, which have returned over $250 million in rebates to clients, along with an array of state and provisional applications. This year marks her 10th anniversary working with the Entertainment Partners by Moneypenny family, and we encourage you to take advantage of her expertise and allow her to advise you from the start so that your results can exceed your expectations. We are also pleased to welcome Pip Williams, Prep, Wrap, and Post-Production Manager at Entertainment Partners powered by Moneypenny. Pip is a finance expert with an impressive track record of success working for large corporations and SMEs, both locally and internationally. A creator and entrepreneur, Pip has founded, owned, and operated SaaS businesses servicing Tier 1 and Tier 2 telcos in Australia and New Zealand. After a stint in the US, Pip has returned to her foundations in film, one once having been a film auditor, and now represents Entertainment Partners powered by Moneypenny, managing prep, wrap, and post-production team. She provides end-to-end solutions, working closely with the training and incentives teams for an integrated and more efficient results. Her team focuses on bringing successful solutions for TV and film across both scripted and unscripted mediums, on budget and on time. She holds a bachelor's in business accounting, master's in organizational leadership, and several postgraduate certificates in executive coaching, accounting, and legal studies. And joining us today from the Australian Office for the Arts is Jason Potkins, Director of Screen Incentives. Jason and his section manage the policy and funding settings that support Australian screen production, including Screen Australia, Ausfilm, the Australian Children's Television Foundation, and his section also manages and delivers the location offset, the PDV offset, and digital games tax offset, as well as the location incentive and the foreign actors certification scheme. And finally, our guest moderator today is Jane Corden, Managing Director of EP's Australian and New Zealand operations. Jane manages a team of 40 in Australia and New Zealand, providing end-to-end service solutions for the film and television industry, from asking, should we shoot in Australia or New Zealand, to banking the rebate. Jane has spent the last 35 years building Moneypenny services and software solutions in the Australia, New Zealand, UK, and South African markets, before Moneypenny was acquired by Entertainment Partners in December of 2022. After an early career as a management accountant for multiple large corporations, Jane worked her way up to production accounting ladder, from assistant to financial controller on larger studio projects from around the world. She has consulted on the design of incentives with government in Australia, South Africa, and Botswana, and has guided the Australian and New Zealand industry through the adoption of fully digital solutions. And she holds a BA in accounting and business law. That was a lot of introductions. It is so wonderful to see you panelists. Thank you for joining us today, Jane and Jill and the rest. I'm going to pass things over to you. I know we have a lot to cover and some very exciting changes from the offset. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Thanks, Natalie. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining us. We're so excited to see so many interested in what we've got to say. Moneypenny was founded in 1980, so we've almost got as long a track record as Entertainment Partners and the Spectrum. Late last year, we teamed up with Entertainment Partners, who recognised the effectiveness of the incentives to attract production across the globe. And we saw the benefit of being part of such a respected international company to attract production to our part of the world. In the 9th of May budget, after a lot of lobbying from industry, the government announced an increase to the locations offset incentive from 16.5% to 30%. A really welcome certainty for overseas productions wanting to take advantage of our great locations, experienced crews, as well as the marquee talent that we have in Australia. We're already having discussions with studios who are seeking to prepare their runway for takeoff once the strikes are settled and production gets back on track. And history indicates that once those doors are open, there'll be a flood of production. And we'd like to see some of it in Australia. The locations offset has been around since it was legislated in 1997 under the Income Tax Assessment Act, when 3 mutually exclusive incentives were introduced: the producer offset for film and TV with significant Australian content, the PDV, and the locations offset. And the last 2 are administered by the Department of the Arts. So it's with great pleasure that we have Jason from the department with us on the panel. So I want to start with you, Jason. Can you start by outlining the existing and new eligibility rules for the location offset, which productions are not eligible, and any other changes that have been introduced in this amendment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jane. Look, so as you've just outlined in the 23-24 budget, the Australian government announced that the location offset will increase its rebate rate from 16.5% to 30%, and that will apply for all productions that commence principal photography on or after 1 July 2023. So the legislation, once it's passed, will apply retrospectively. There are some changes as part of that announcement. The minimum expenditure thresholds will increase from 1 July 2023. So the current minimum expenditure thresholds under the location offset are 15 million and 1 million per hour for a television series. Those will increase to 20 million and 1.5 million per hour for the television series. We're also going to introduce a couple of new eligibility requirements, which are going to be carried over from the location incentive program. The first is a requirement that a production must meet minimum training obligations or contribute to the broader workforce and infrastructure capacity of the sector. And the second is a requirement that a production must use one or more Australian providers to deliver post-digital and visual effects for the production. We'll also introduce some new reporting requirements that are proposed as part of the application process, and that's to capture data around employment of Australian crew, use of Australian businesses, training, and some other statistical data as well. Now, in contrast to the location incentive program, which some of the participants may be familiar with, that was the top-up program that the government had in place since 2018. Under the location offset and under the new location offset, there will be no requirement to be footloose or not locked into production in Australia. And there will be no requirement to secure state or territory support for the production before you commence. And then effectively all other eligibility requirements around the location offset will remain the same. So things like what is QAPE or what is qualifying Australian production expenditure formats, those kind of things will all remain the same.
Thanks, Jason. And just another question for you, because we know that though this is effective from the 1st of July, it's not actually yet legislated. So can you talk a bit about the benefits that this incentive is incorporated into the Income Tax Act in terms of its certainty and longevity, which is obviously very important for the planning of productions, and just give us some indication of what that legislative process will be and how it impacts productions that are going into production before the legislation's in place.
Sure. So I'll start with the legislative process. So as I've just outlined, the government has announced that the location offset will increase. That means it's government policy. So their intention is to increase the offset. It does still need to go through legislation. The legislation, which is the Income Tax Assessment Act 1997, is actually the responsibility of our Treasury Department. And they have the lead on taking forward all of the legislative amendments throughout Parliament. We're working very closely with Treasury on the drafting of that legislation and how it will look. Now, the absolute end date for the passage of legislation, we don't have a firm time frame yet, but we absolutely know that we need to pass it before 30 June 2024. That's because if we pass it after the end of the Australian financial year, there are some very complicated transitional arrangements that apply. It will be applied retrospectively. So as I said before, the amendments will mean that eligible productions that commence principal photography on or after 1 July 2023 will be eligible to apply for the new increased 30% rate. Any productions that commence principal photography before that date, so that is before 30 June 2023, will only be eligible for the 16.5%, the current rate of the location offset. Now, obviously, we're moving from a two-step process, which is, part of the rebate rate, which is 16.5%, is currently in legislation. In the location offset, we also have a top-up grant program, which is the location incentive program, which provides or did provide a 13.5% top-up to that 16.5% rate. We're moving to a full legislated 30% rate. So essentially what we're moving towards is a rebate rate of 30%, which is unlimited and uncapped. It will remain in the legislation for as long as it remains in the legislation until it's changed again, whenever it is in the future. That will give productions, obviously, absolute certainty around the rebate rate that they are eligible for. It means that if your production budget changes during the course of the production, then it doesn't impact the value of the incentive that you receive at the end of it. It's a process which is obviously known to many. It's relatively simple. It avoids the administrative burden of having to apply for a two-stage application process, and it's much more streamlined and simpler through an offset process. The other aspect as well is you don't have to apply for any funding up front. It's a non-competitive process. So technically you can go through the entire production process and apply at the end for your offset, just like you do with the other offsets in the Australian system. So, in terms of kind of certainty and guarantees of productions and being able to plan productions now and into the future over the long term, it's a very big change.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's certainly very attractive, I think, and just great that we have got it in place now. Liberty, as Entertainment Partners Australian Incentives Manager, you've managed more than 50 incentives over the last 12 months. Can you talk about the timing from completion of filming to money in the bank? Because that's what people are most interested in. How quickly are they going to get the money? And what is our process? What is your process to streamline that as much as possible?
The incentive process really starts at the outset. Ideally, we're able to liaise with the production team from the start of the production to ensure the project is set up for success. We are then able to perform interim reviews and ensure the right documentation is being collated along the way. This will aid in minimising the turnaround time and therefore hopefully minimising the interest that's paid. Once the project has finished spending in Australia, the cost report for incentive purposes can be finalised and sent to audit. Audit usually takes around 4 weeks. Once the audit is complete, the application can be submitted to the department. It then goes into a queue to be allocated to an assessor. The assessment period can roughly take about 15 weeks, depending on how long the department's queue is, the complexity of the project, and the number of queries that an assessor might have. Once the final certificate is issued, the tax return is lodged and money is usually in the bank within 4 weeks. The tax return doesn't have to be tied to standard year ends. A substituted accounting period can be applied for to ensure you can lodge your tax return as soon as you receive your certificate, though this must be applied 6 weeks before submitting to the department. So to summarise, the overall timeline is approximately 4 to 6 months from final cost report to money in the bank.
Pretty good. And of course, it's not just about setting up in the beginning, is it? I mean, there's quite an extensive checklist of documents and so on that need to be submitted. Give us an example of those things and how a production can be organised to have everything ready to go as soon as it's possible.
So part of setting up these systems is providing these documents throughout production. This will ensure that it's a smoother handover process. Some items are available at the financing stage, then the remaining become available once shoot is finished. Ideally, the documents are best collated as soon as they're final or available. These documents might be your calendar, your travel logs, contracts. Yes, that's it.
Thanks, Lib. And
sorry. Pip, it would be great if you could now outline how we work on with production at the beginning and the end to streamline the process.
Thanks, Lib. At Entertainment Partners, we offer a complete end-to-end solution at every stage of the production. We utilise refined checklists and procedures for each stage of production. When taking on a project at wrap or post stage, we firstly undertake a health check to review the data hygiene. We track critical elements such as your minimum spends and collate incentive documentation. We want to ensure that everything is in order before we release the outgoing production team. We focus on the end result, and that is the incentive analysis. We ensure accounting protocol and descriptions are comprehensive, which makes the audit process more streamlined. We utilise the time in post to close out the production, gather any missing information, and make corrections to tagging. And importantly, we prep for both the financial and incentive audits.
So, Lib, apart from the location offset, there's more, isn't there? What are the other things that production coming to Australia can access just briefly, and how can you help them optimise those opportunities?
As the location offset is a federal incentive, you can also apply for state incentive grants, and these vary from state to state and range from 10 to 20% of qualifying spend. Our states are always jostling to get more films to go there, and there are many state grants that can be utilised. It's best to contact us at the budgeting stage so we can help you maximise your rebate possibilities.
Thanks, Lib. Jill, we've been training accountants and assistant accountants for more than 30 years, as it said in your opening bio. Entertainment Partners globally have made a big commitment to training, establishing the EP Academy, with whom you're working very closely. And recently, it seems that we can't train enough or fast enough. What are your comments around the training piece?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yes, a high percentage of the current accounting teams in Australia have actually come via the Entertainment Partners Moneypenny model of in-house and on-the-job training and mentoring. I'm very pleased to see training as part of the eligibility criteria for the location offset, as it'll benefit not only the Australian domestic industry, but will ensure that overseas inbound projects will be well resourced into the future. We're already running programs to attract students with an eye on diversity and inclusion. It's a win-win for inbound projects, the domestic market, and of course, for people looking to get a foot into the industry door that was once perhaps closed to them.
Yes, well done to the government for including that in the incentive amendments. Since you've taken on that full-time role of training director, you've been developing tailored programs for accountants. Can you just give us a bit of a flavour of what they look like and how you think they're going to fit with the location offset eligibility requirements?
For sure. So we want to continue our good work, which we've developed over decades. And my full-time training director role has allowed us to focus on training and therefore fast-track candidates into our industry via several different training programs. Firstly, we're all about targeting the shortage of accountants. We run a 2-day fundamentals bridging course that we deliver to students wanting to transfer their existing accounting skills into our industry. Those students are either put directly onto a show, if the opportunity exists, or they elect to further their training with our 12-week industry certificate that we run with the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. Earlier this year, we partnered with Netflix to provide that same material over an intensive 10-day period to 14 students, 7 of which are now on their way to a life in film accounting. Our federal film financing body, Screen Australia, recognised the need to help the industry with training, and we've secured funding to teach and supply post-production and payroll accountants within a year. After a few shows as an assistant and with the right opportunity for a step-up position, we also mentor them so that they'll evolve into the financial controllers of tomorrow. Our entertainment partners' colleagues in America already have amazing online training tools, and we're working with them to regionalise these for Australia and New Zealand. However, an accounts team is only as good as the information that is fed to them. So our newest workplace training program will involve training at the pre-production phase to the production team, art department, locations, costume, and the on-set crew to use the digital tools available to them more effectively. Our aim is to place them all with mentors to guide them through best practices and by default help the accounting team to provide more accurate information to the producers. Pip and I work closely together in post-production to learn what not to do and what systems we can put in place for new projects to avoid any pitfalls. Pip, can you expand on that?
Sure, Jill. Actually, I came to Entertainment Partners by way of attending one of Jill's training courses. I attended the 12-week AFTRS course, which was thoroughly rewarding and challenging, but it placed me in the best position to migrate my existing corporate skills back into film and media. I started off as a production accountant in post, and now I manage a team of more than 11 in the prep, wrap, and post activities. At Entertainment Partners, we adopt an advisory approach, working with clients, and it is always best to get us involved early in the production life cycle. Our team comprises of both full-time and part-time members. Thereby, we have the capacity to pick up prep for you. In prep, we work with you to construct the budget, create the cash flow, and create the drawdown schedule. We focus on software setup, customize your chart of accounts and your general ledger, and importantly, equipping your team with training so that they are ready to run once in the shoot phase. We identify and set reporting needs, which are critical for the incentive analysis, financiers' reporting obligations, and meeting federal and state outcome requirements. At Entertainment Partners, we work together for your benefit. Our target is to maximise offset returns and minimise delay in getting your final certificate.
Thanks, Pip. Josh, the other eligibility piece is around the engaging with a post house, and our post facilities in Australia are world-class. Spectrum's been around for longer than Moneypenny, playing a major part together with Ausfilm and the government incentives to bring production to Australia and do end-to-end production here, or packets of post. Can you give us some insights to your strategic thinking and how you expect to work with the requirements of the locations incentive?
Sure, thanks, Jane. And yeah, great to meet everyone. I'm very excited about an increased location offset from 16.5% to 30%. And we're excited about more production accountants too, post-production accountants. And I agree, once the uncertainty of the strikes is resolved, which we're hoping for everyone's sake, that there'll be a flood of film and TV activity. As you said, we're established in 1964, a family business, and we celebrate 60 years next year. And some of the projects we worked on historically, Dead Poet Society, The Piano, Truman Show, and The Matrix. So we've been seeing many cycles of this industry. And I've been at the helm for 16 years, and it's been the most robust I've seen it. My company, we've worked very hard over the last 10 years to diversify. We've invested in infrastructure and talent, and our strategy with the location offset is to attract and retain overseas post-production and VFX work. So currently we're at 48 edit suites and 4 theatres on the Disney lot in Sydney, as you said, and we offer state-of-the-art end-to-end post-production and VFX. We have the largest Dolby Atmos mixing theatre in the country, which we renovated in 2019, and it's now, I believe, world-class. So the infrastructure, the team that we put together, we believe and have been told is now comparable to anything in Hollywood, which is really exciting for the Australian industry. So we've increased our capacity, we've invested in upskilling our team, so we're able to service projects of any size. And our recent growth is on the back of Marvel, Disney, Warner Brothers, Netflix, and a robust local market. Part of our strategy is also regular trips to Los Angeles to continue and build those relationships. And the big strategy is to keep the confidence of the studios. So over the last 2 years, we've worked on the Oscar-nominated Power of the Dog, Elvis, as well as 3,000 Years of Longing with George Miller, Mortal Kombat, Thor, Love and Thunder, and Shang-Chi, just to name a few of the studio picks that we've done down here. Our big strategy is to ensure that studios and streamers, producers, production companies continue to have that confidence in doing post-production down here. And a big strength of the industry down here is working along other highly reputable Australian facilities across the country. So the strength of this offering in Australia is the collaboration between the various facilities and the creatives across the country. We work closely with companies like EP to ensure that thresholds are met and that any QA or PDV work is properly captured and accounted for. And it's these collaborations that allow us to focus on the creative and the tech. Traditionally, location offset films shoot and ship, so they head back to the US after the shoot, and our big strategy is to try and convince those projects to stay in Australia and complete their post and VFX, utilising the location offset increase. We have globally recognised and award-winning sound and picture creatives, and we want to add more to the value chain than just servicing offline during the shoot. And I've thought about this, and perhaps it's a hybrid where the director's cut happens back in LA and post-production and VFX are taking part in Australia, taking advantage of the rebates. So to give you a little example of a project that we did, but during COVID, we worked on Mortal Kombat for New Line. At one stage, we had the director in Perth, we had the editor in Los Angeles, and editorial and post-production VFX teams in Sydney. So I think, look, at the moment, everything is possible. I think the incentive is the carrot we all need, that certainty, competitive rebate. It's very exciting times for our industry. And finally, it is a big part of our strategy. Also spruik the fantastic lifestyles of living and working in Australia and in Sydney, in the harbour city. Crews are happy here. We work hard. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing like having a swim at Bondi Beach before work in the morning.
Fantastic. I think that's really the key thing, isn't it, is wanting to get productions to spend longer here because, you know, as Liberty said before, there are other incentives. There are the state PDV incentives as well that can be tapped into that deliver, you know, another 10, 15, 20% potentially on top of the 30% that you've got. So come here and stay here. Spend some time down at the beach as well.
Totally, exactly.
Fantastic. Just another question for you, Jason. For those that are budgeting shows, when do you think we're going to know what percentage it is or how that percentage is going to work in terms of the requirement for spend on training?
Yeah, so look, we're currently consulting on the training requirements and what they actually should look like. What we're trying to do is trying to encourage productions and studios to commit to long-term training wherever they possibly can. The reason for that is under the location incentive program, which has been running since 2018, we've seen the best outcome for trainees where trainees have been put through a number of productions to kind of, you know, learn their skills and those kind of things. We've found that most benefits the sector, so we're trying to find ways that we can incentivize that within the offset structure. If productions can't commit to that, and we recognize that many productions can't commit to that, then there will likely be a minimum expenditure requirement. You know, we haven't got a fixed percentage at this point in time. That's still subject to consultation and agreement. But it's likely that we will probably phase in any expenditure requirement like that over time, and it will be subject to a cap. But again, that will be subject to, you know, kind of future consultation. Look, we know that puts, you know, productions in a very tricky position because, you know, you're unable to plan definitively at this point in time without those firm eligibility requirements in place. But unfortunately, until the legislation is passed, we just can't be definitive. It is still subject to government process.
Yeah, I understand that, but you know, our message really to everybody out there is that, you know, we've happily been part of that consulting process with the Department of the Arts, and as you can see from Jill, that we've been working on creating programs that we think are genuinely beneficial both to your productions when you bring them here and to the industry at large. And so another reason to talk to us early on and see how we can help you with all of that. Liberty, with all the offset applications that you've seen, are there any particular issues that have resulted in significant time delays that could be avoided?
The common issues are really production documentation not tying in with the accounting. So, for example, travel logs not matching what was paid or charged in the general ledger, or up-to-date documentation isn't handed over before the production staff move on to their next project. So that makes it a little bit difficult to get any information that we might have been lacking. They're the main delays that we see.
So it's preparation, hey?
Yeah.
Josh, we know that you've got great facilities. How do you compare financially with other destinations that have incentives around the world? Obviously, our exchange is making a good difference at the moment. To how you compare, Josh?
Yeah, totally. It's as I've said, never been more optimistic about the opportunities in Australia to post here. I'm most experienced in tech lead advanced post houses with award-winning sound and picture creatives. And we've got certainly for international productions, and I think with the PDV wrapped in with the location offset and the currency exchange, which is a shocker when we have to go and shop in the US, I think it's very cost effective to do your post-production down here.
Yeah, agreed. Jill, given a good production accountant's not created overnight or even in the duration of one or two shows, what's the best way for us to attract, once we've attracted them into the industry, keep them engaged and committed to a long-term career?
Yeah, look, I think it's all about sustainability. Accounting assistants and clerks are always on a show last and off first. So it's hard to keep them consistently employed. However, if we're able to get advance notice of production company or studio slates, we'll be able to provide more solid timelines so that we can help to place them and then provide more job security. This new training eligibility criteria is going to be a boon in providing new positions on shows that maybe once never allowed for them in their budgets. Also, no doubt the ability to work remotely in this digital world has opened up the field, and the flexibility to job share or work part-time is a good thing when we attempt to tackle the work-life balance conundrum for our industry. Really, the more agile an accountant and the show is, the easier it'll be to find jobs and keep them employed.
It's an important thing for Australian for sure. Pip, as an ex-auditor, do you have any final recommendations on how the audit and incentive process could be enhanced?
Thanks. Look, my recommendation is to ways to improve the audit and incentive process is to have and to importantly utilise a robust and accessible centralised document storage system which matches the incentive checklist, something such as Synchronise. In addition, At Entertainment Partners, we utilise SharePoint to protect your data, but importantly, the offset and incentive documentation starts at pre-production and continues right throughout to the end of post when we move into audit.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all from the panel today, and I think we've timed that reasonably well. Natalie, I think maybe there's a few questions there from our audience.
Yes, we do. We got quite a few questions. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to give this first question to Liberty. We had someone write in and ask about how productions can utilize shooting in multiple locations. So say shooting in the US and then shooting in Australia. And still qualify for the incentive. I know Josh touched on this a bit, but is there any advice or anything that productions should know if they're going to try to work in multiple places and qualify for incentives in multiple areas?
Yeah, so production can shoot in multiple locations if that's what they want to do, as long as for the Australian location incentive, they are reaching their minimum spend of 20 million Australian dollars in qualifying spend, and of course, reach the other criteria, such as the training component, they will be eligible for the offset here.
All right, great.
And it's probably, if I can just pop in, it's probably important to note that the qualifying spend includes the overseas actors and overseas personnel when they are in Australia. So, that's just important to take into account in terms of recognising how that minimum 20 million is met.
Great point. Thank you, Jane. Jane, I'm going to actually direct this next question to you. We've had a few people write in asking about co-production. Is there anything that you can share about co-production? Are there any limitations to co-production agreements that Australia has? So is there anything that you could add some color to?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there are two kinds of co-productions, if you like, those that are under a formal co-pro treaty and co-finance projects. So treaty projects can actually access under the producer offset because they immediately get significant Australian content status as a result if they're formalised as a co-production under a treaty. But there is no treaty with the US, so that's Canada, UK, New Zealand, France. There are various treaty countries where, in fact, that provides a different pathway into Australian incentives. And we're happy, it's sort of outside the realms of this particular presentation, but we're more than happy to discuss with anybody where co-production might be an opportunity.
All right. Great reason to reach out to the team. Thank you. We have a question here about diversity hiring and if it's a requirement for the offset, and are there any incentive requirements for post-production? So two-part question from one of our viewers. Jason, I'm going to send this question over to you.
Thanks. No, look, there's no additional federal incentives relating to diversity hiring. Some of our state and territory incentives may have some requirements, and just to kind of reinforce the fact that you can claim the federal location offset in addition to any state and territory incentives that may be offered as well. So really the states and territories might have diversity hiring, but we do not under the location offset and will not under the location offset. The other aspect about post-production, we will have that eligibility criteria that you must use one or more Australian PDV provider in the production. That provider can be a sole trader or a company. We're not intending to put in a minimum expenditure requirement at this stage, but we will actually closely monitor through our reporting, how that travels. And that's to kind of address the point that Josh touched on before, is about how much people kind of stay behind in Australia to use post-production rather than VFX, for example, during the shoot. The other aspect as well is the PDV offset, which is the separate offset, 30% offset for eligible PDV activity undertaken in Australia is there as well. And the minimum expenditure threshold is $500,000. And that's Australian dollars. And when we're talking about dollars in this session at the moment, we are talking about Australian dollars. I saw a question earlier. And again, that multiplies with state incentives. They can be added to that as well.
All right, wonderful. I have a follow-up to this, and Liberty, I'm going to ask this question to you. Are there any requirements when it comes to Australian local talent, citizenship of crew or talent in order to qualify?
So Jane did touch on this just a moment ago. For talent wages to qualify as QAPE, the work must be completed in Australia. So regardless of Australian citizenship, if an Australian cast member completes any part of the shoot overseas, a portion of that wage would be non-qualifying.
All right, wonderful. Jason, I'm actually going to come back to you. We've got a couple of questions about how to apply, what is the process, and how soon can a production apply?
So look, at the moment, you can apply for a provisional certificate for the location offset, but unfortunately it's only at the current rate. That's the 16.5%. When the legislation passes, you will be able to apply for a provisional certificate at the new rate of 30% and do an eligibility check. The easiest way to apply is to go to our website, which is www.arts.gov.au, and then go to our Smarty Grants portal. There's links available on that website. And then you can start commencing your provisional or your final application process. We also have a production register, which is just a very short form of a production's intent to come to Australia, just asking some kind of threshold questions around where, the who's, the what's, and how many people might you be employing, just so that we can track productions who are interested in coming into Australia. You don't have to commit to do so.
All right, wonderful. We have a question here. Someone would like to know what incentives are available for independent U.S. feature films. Liberty, is there anything that you can share about that?
So the location offset is available for independents and studios. Anyone can access that, assuming they meet the minimum spend and criteria. And as Jason and Jane touched on earlier, the other options would be if you're an official co-pro from a treaty country or a production that's doing your post-production in Australia, and you can apply for the PDB rebate.
All right. Jill, I'm going to come over to you. We have a question. How possible or hard or easy is it for a U.S. employee to come over and work in Australia? Is there anything that you can offer our audience that may be looking to relocate?
Yeah, come on down. It's lovely down here, as Josh said earlier. Look, there's a shortage of production accountants globally. So we in Australia can't probably service every single film that's going to come here with our current existing accounting teams. And I know that some of the biggest studio films have already brought down their own financial controller and their own first assistant. And then we will supply the rest of the teams. But of course, you have to get a visa for that to be able to work here. So yeah, you must be able to fulfill the visa requirements. But at the moment, I think it'd be relatively easy to be able to come work here.
All right, wonderful. And this is actually going to be our last question. So thank you for everyone submitting questions. Jason, I'm going to come back to you because we got a question about training requirements. Can you give a little bit of background about the training requirements for the offset, and that will wrap up our Q&A.
Yeah, so look, we had training requirements under the Location Incentive Program, which was the program that's been running since 2018. So any production applying for that 13.5% top up to the location offset rate had to do training requirements. And when we were designing, I suppose, the new increased rate to 30%, we always knew that we wanted to continue to reinforce the fact that there are capacity constraints in Australia, just as everybody has kind of outlined for both below the line, for below the line crew in particular. And we wanted to make sure that productions, when they come over, continue to contribute to the sector as a whole and help train people to come into the sector. So really what we're looking at the moment is, obviously, we're trying to get productions to go through one of two routes: either develop a long-term training program if you are going to bring multiple productions in over a period of time, or if you're just a single production coming in and out to Australia, then having a minimum spend on training. That's really the two routes that we're looking at the moment. Again, this is still being consulted on and is still subject to government decisions, but we hope to finalize that very shortly, at least in the next couple of months, and definitely before the introduction of the legislation, whenever that is. So hopefully by the time the legislation is introduced, people will have a very clear idea of what kind of training requirements they need to meet, how those will be phased in over time, what the level of expenditure is, and what the caps, or if there are caps, what they will be as well, so that people can be very clear and confident before they come to the country what they need to do in terms of training. And then obviously you can just commence production. You don't need to pre-apply. You don't need to go through any kind of government process to kind of start production. You can commence production and then claim your tax offset at the end of the production.
Wonderful. And I know that the team in Australia can help with training, so please do reach out to Jane and Jill and the rest. Well, thank you, panelists, for joining us today, and thank you again to all of our participants who have shared questions. If we did not get to your question, please know that we may follow up with you, or you can always find information over on our website. So with that, if you enjoyed today's session, please consider joining us for our fall lineup of Master Series. Our next episode will be dedicated to what's changing in the UK Film Incentive Program, followed by a session discussing the locations and studio space infrastructure available in the UK. And we also have a compliance series coming with information about workers' comp, state and federal unemployment insurance, and paid sick leave in the US. If you would like to revisit today's webinar along with the complete library of Master Series episodes, and we've done over 120 at this point, many webinars, please visit our website, go to ep.com/masterseries. You can access our full library with industry and product news, production incentives, financing, payroll tax, legislation, and more. In addition, we do encourage you to visit us and check out our production incentives support. If you are looking for guidance on incentives or financing in North America, Australia, and beyond, our team of experts is here to ensure that your production gets the best incentive and financing guidance in the industry. You can find some great self-service tools at ep.com/production incentives, as well as information about how to get in touch with our team. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you all come back for our next Master Series.